3IJ Pro School proudly presents How to Make Solid Videos Quickly, Video 2, The Master Shell. In Video 1, we talked about the tutorial shell, the education shell, and the teaching shell, which are all one and the same. Let's take a quick review of that. We call that shell the DJA shell, which stands for Destination, Journey, and Arrival. It's a three-step speaking pattern used by educators and teachers of all types whenever they need to deliver information quickly and easily. It's often referred to in this way. Step 1, I'm going to tell you. Step 2, I'm telling you. And step 3, I told you. You can also think of this as an introduction, then the content, then we review the content. This is all it takes for the standard traditional tutorial or lecture or education shell. However, great teachers go a little bit further than that. Great teachers persuade you to listen, to pay attention, to learn what they have to say. Great teachers make us become all ears, riveted on every comment that they make, every word that comes out of their mouth. So how do they do this? Well, great teachers understand the 4 elements of persuasion. They provide information. They answer questions before those questions are asked. They unlock mysteries and provide genuine value to us. And lastly, they crush our concerns. They address and assuage our worries before we have a chance to present them. Okay, that sounds simple. But how do they manage to do those 4 things so simply and easily? Well, they use what's called the greatest shell on earth. We've gone over the DJA shell. Now let's look at the greatest shell. And now before we get into it, I want to reveal the fact that 90% of all communication, intentional and unintentional, uses the greatest shell on earth. So what is it? Well, we call it the master shell. And in order to learn it, I want to introduce you to 3 friends. These are the 3 musketeers of speech: ethos, pathos, and logos. Let's look at them one by one. Ethos is evidence. Pathos is emotion. Logos is logic. All right, let's take a look and see them in action. The best evidence is action. So let's take a look at examples. Here's an advertisement from Zone Hair Care Products. You'll find very quickly that this ethos, pathos, and logos, the master shell, is everywhere you care to look. Let's take a look at this ad for a second. First, we see ethos. Ethos is evidence. This woman has great, shiny, full, silky, robust hair. So by taking a look at her, we are seeing evidence that the Zone products work. Second is pathos. She's making a face, an expression. That's the beginning of the emotional appeal. Second, we've got some words over here. Let me read these to you. Defined simply as the perfect balance of aromatherapy and science, a complete line of products designed for multi-textured hair. This is the emotional appeal. Lastly, we go into the logical appeal. And again, we've got text and the image, featuring a technologically advanced reflexor system that understands all hair textures are unique. The Aroski Science Zone addresses them all, from texturizing to gloriously straight. Inquire at your favorite saloon. See how that's much more logical than the perfect balance of aromatherapy. So that's the logical appeal, and then we've got the image of the products themselves. So, using the master shell. Ethos, give proof and evidence first. Pathos, provide an emotional appeal. Logos, support the emotional appeal logically. So let's take that and modify it one level to the way it's most commonly used by teachers and instructors in tutorials. First, they add an introduction, and at the end, they add a conclusion. That's all it takes to modify the master shell. As we go into the traditional, I want to deliver this to you, there's the prologue, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and then the epilogue. So this is what you use when you're making a shell. It determines which specific 3-act structure you're going to be presenting from. So let's take a look at the shell of today's presentation. In today's presentation, I used the modified shell. Introduction, Act 1, I showed you the destination. Act 2, we took a journey together. Act 3, the arrival at our destination. Let's go through these one by one real quick. In the introduction, we talked about the 4 elements of persuasion, which are: we provide information, we answer questions before they are asked, we honestly provide value to our listeners, and we address and assuage their concerns. Then we took a look at the traditional shell for the tutorial, which simply goes, I'm going to tell you, I'm telling you, I told you. And then the master shell, we learned that today. That's ethos, pathos, and logos, which are evidence, emotion, and logic. Then we took a look at them in action by taking looks at actual advertisements, where we saw that all of the advertisers attempted to show their product in action. Then they attempted to make an emotional appeal by presenting their products in an appealing manner and making appealing claims. And then in the end, they all provided logical proof. Then, as we moved a little bit further, we talked about modifying the shell very simply by adding an introduction called a prologue and a conclusion called an epilogue. Tomorrow, you're going to learn why we don't use the word introduction and conclusion as we begin to learn to modify the shells a little bit more quickly and a little bit more advanced. Now we're at the arrival portion of the presentation, and I'm showing you today's shell. This is the actual shell that this presentation is being done from. Now, oh, it says I need to resolve yesterday's teaser. I forgot to do. So you probably already guessed. Yesterday's teaser, the question was, what is the single most common thing people constantly try to persuade others to do? Hopefully by the end of this presentation, you've already guessed the answer, which is we try to persuade other people to listen to us, to pay attention to what we have to say. Constantly. You'll see this everywhere you care to look. It's the biggest challenge advertisers have to get over, is just to get people's attention. Tomorrow's lesson, we're going to talk about the persuade to take action shell, and we're going to begin to look at how to combine shells. That's it for video 2. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you tomorrow.